4 months later, the first certified letter arrived at the Harrington house on Cactus Road. Jonathan Harrington signed for it himself. His hand shook so badly, the courier asked if he needed a chair. The return address was stark and impossible to misunderstand. Department of the Treasury, Internal Revenue Service, Large Business and International Division. Jonathan stood in the marble foyer for a full minute before opening it. Diane sat at the breakfast table, untouched coffee growing cold, staring at nothing. Ryan hovered nearby, pretending to read emails he already knew would be bad. Nicole wasn't home. She rarely was anymore. The letter was short and brutal. Unreported. Offshore income. Fraud penalties assessed at 75%. Interest compounding daily. Total liability, $21,412,000. Payment deadline, 90 days. Jonathan lowered himself into a chair like his bones had aged 10 years and 10 seconds. This was no longer damage control. This was survival. The fallout didn't come all at once. It never does. It came in waves. 2 weeks later, the Dubai Sovereign Fund withdrew from the Marina project. No explanation beyond regulatory concerns. $400 million in projected revenue vanished with a single email. 48 hours later, the Vegas high-rise partnership followed. Then another. Then another. Banks stopped returning calls. Ryan lasted 9 days as CFO. The board meeting was closed door, but security escorted him out in full view of the lobby. His Harvard diploma sat inside a cardboard box like a joke that stopped being funny. Is LinkedIn headline froze on open to new opportunities. No one called. Nicole's husband filed for divorce that same month. His attorney attached came in. Trust documents to the petition, citing undisclosed marital assets. The judge froze every account tied to her name pending forensic review. Her range. Rover was repossessed in the country club parking lot. The women she had lunched with for years suddenly didn't see her. Diane's social calendar collapsed quietly. Her name disappeared from gala invitations. Boards accepted her resignation with polite emails and immediate distance. Group chats went silent. Tennis partners canceled without explanation. She started taking pills at lunch. Jonathan aged rapidly. The silver at his temples turned white. His posture bent inward, like gravity had finally decided he wasn't exempt. For the first time in his life, he stopped hosting dinners. The house went on the market 6 weeks later, priced 22% below comps. Buyers circled, but no one rushed. Everyone knew the story. The Harrington name had become radioactive. Grandmother. Vivian ended at. At 91, she still sat straight-backed in her leather wing chair, eyes sharp as cut glass. She summoned Jonathan, Diane, Ryan, and Nicole to her ranch. No lawyers. No theatrics. She slid revised estate documents across the table. All 4 names appeared under a single line. Intentionally omitted. Everything else went to distant cousins and 3 animal rescue charities. Vivian didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. You tried to steal from your own blood, she said. Blood remembers. They left in silence. That was the last family meeting. I didn't hear any of this in real time. I was busy. 3 weeks after New Year's Eve, an email landed in my inbox. The subject line read, "We would be honored." The director of a Soho gallery flew to Phoenix the next day. She walked my studio without flinching at the dust and offered an exclusive 3-year contract before lunch, a raw loft in New York. Kilns installed. Rent covered. By September, I stood in a sunlit space overlooking the Hudson, throwing the first new forms of my life without a last name I hated. Collectors, who once ignored me, begged for waiting lists. Museums requested loans. My prices tripled. Then tripled again. Not because of scandal, because the work finally had room to breathe. One gray November afternoon, a certified envelope arrived at the gallery desk. The sender was Jonathan Harrington. I didn't open it. I wrote "Return to sender" across the front and dropped it back into the system. That was the last time any of them tried. On the first real snow day of winter, I loaded my new kiln for its inaugural firing. 40 pieces, bottles with cracked desert glazes. Platters heavy as truth. bowls so thin they rang when touched. I set the program, closed the door, and pressed start. The elements glowed orange dot outside. Snow softened the city into silence dot inside. The kill roared, steady and unforgiving. I stood at the window with a mug of coffee, watching flakes drift over the river, thinking about the girl who used to hide in a pottery shed behind a mansion because it was the only place no one followed her. I thought about everything they told me, IWSN single quotes T. Hours later. The kill beeped. The cycle was complete. I opened the door to shelves of fire-kissed clay. Stronger, harder, more beautiful than anything that had ever come from that house. I smiled. Some families teach you who you are by lifting you up. Others teach you by trying to erase you. I learned that love, tied to control, is not love. That money can buy silence, but not truth. And that choosing your own path will always threaten people who profit from you staying small. I didn't destroy my family. They did. When they decided my worth was conditional. All I did was stop protecting them from the consequences. If your family only values you when you fit their plan, they don't want you. They want compliance. You don't owe loyalty to people who would sacrifice you to preserve their image. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't forgiveness. It's walking away, building your own table, and letting the fire finish what silence never could. Asterisk, and if you're listening to this right now, standing at the edge of a choice you've been avoiding, hear this clearly. You are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are not ungrateful for refusing to be controlled. And you are not weak for walking away from people who only love the version of you they can use. Pain does not mean you made the wrong decision. Sometimes it means you finally made the right one. Let them call it betrayal. Let them rewrite the story to save their pride. Truth doesn't need permission to exist. Your life is not a debt you owe to anyone. Your dreams are not negotiable. And your silence is not required to keep others comfortable. When you stop shrinking, some people will lose access to you. That is not loss. That is clarity. Build something they can't take from you. A skill, a craft, a piece that doesn't depend on approval. And when the fire comes, because it always does, let it harden you, not consume you. Because what survives the fire was always meant to last. Asterisk, and one day, long after the noise fades, you'll realize something quietly powerful. You didn't lose a family. You escaped a cage. The nights will get lighter. The air will feel less heavy. Your laughter will stop sounding like permission and start sounding like truth. You won't need closure from people who never saw you clearly. You won't need apologies that arrive too late to matter. You'll look back and understand that the moment you chose yourself was the moment your life actually began. Not louder, not richer, not easier, but honest, and that honesty will carry you farther than approval ever could. So if no one has told you this yet, let this be the last line you need to hear. You are allowed to leave. You're allowed to rebuild. And you are allowed to become someone they can no longer control. The story doesn't end where they tried to break you. It ends where you finally stood up and walked forward without asking permission. Asterisk, and when you reach that place, the one you never thought you were allowed to stand in, you'll notice how quiet it is. No shouting, no guilt, no constant explaining of who you are. Just space. Space to think, space to grow, space to become whole without being corrected. You'll understand that peace doesn't come from being forgiven by people who hurt you. It comes from forgiving yourself for staying so long. You stayed because you hoped, because you loved, because you believed things could change. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. But leaving is where strength begins. Leaving is where you stop surviving and start living. Leaving is where your voice stops shaking. Leaving is where your future finally belongs to you. So let them keep their version of the story. Let them keep their money, their pride, their carefully built lies. You keep your freedom. Because in the end, the greatest revenge was never watching them fall. It was rising so far beyond them that their control can no longer reach you and their names no longer defined you. This is not a story about loss. It is a story about Release Dot, and it ends here with you walking forward steady, unafraid, and finally free. And if this story feels familiar, if it echoes something you've lived through or are still living through, let this be the moment you breathe a little deeper. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are in the middle of becoming Dot. What was taken from you did not disappear. It changed form. It turned into awareness, into boundaries, into a strength you didn't know how to name before. There will be days when you miss what you thought you had. Not the truth, but the hope. The version of family you kept believing would show up someday. That grief is real. Honor it. But don't let it pull you backward. You are not meant to live where you have to beg for respect. You are not meant to earn love by enduring harm. You are not meant to stay small so others can feel powerful. Your life is bigger than their approval. Your future is wider than their limits. And your worth was never theirs to decide, Dot, so take the step. Even if your hands shake, even if your voice trembles, walk anyway. Because the moment you choose yourself, not loudly, not dramatically, but firmly, everything begins to change. And this time, the ending isn't written by them, Dot, it's written by you. Asterisk, and that is where this story truly rests, not in revenge, not in anger, but in quiet certainty. Certainty that you survived something that tried to define you. Certainty that you chose truth over comfort. Certainty that your life is finally your own. You won't always feel strong. Some mornings will still ache. Some memories will still knock without warning, but they no longer own you. Your future is no longer shaped by fear. Your choices are no longer filtered through approval. Your voice no longer asks permission to exist. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to succeed without guilt. You are allowed to be happy without explaining why. This isn't about winning, Dot, it's about waking up one day and realizing you're no longer carrying what was never yours to hold, Dot. And when you reach that moment, standing in a life you built with your own hands, you'll understand the truth that changes everything. Walking away wasn't the end of you, Dot, it was the beginning. Asterisk, and in that beginning, you will find something unexpected. Freedom doesn't roar. It doesn't demand attention. It simply breathes. Quietly around you, steady and unshakable. You'll notice how small worries, the ones that used to feel like mountains, now crumble under your gaze. You'll see opportunities you didn't even know were possible. People who align with your truth will appear, not out of obligation, but because your authenticity draws them in. There will still be echoes of the past, their voices, their judgments, their attempts to control, but they will sound distant, like a storm far away, incapable of touching the life you've claimed. And that is when you realize the real lesson. Life doesn't reward the compliant. Life favors the courageous, the relentless, the ones willing to risk comfort for truth, Dot, so you keep moving forward. You build, you create, you grow, you thrive, not for them, not for anyone else, but for yourself, for the person you were always meant to become, Dot, in the quiet moments. When the sun sets or the snow falls or the kill cools, you'll smile not with triumph over them, but with pride in yourself, because you finally understand you didn't need their permission. You didn't need their validation. You only needed the courage to step into your own life. And with that, the story closes not with a scream or a collapse, but with steady, unshakable freedom. The Harringtons are left to reckon with themselves. You are left to live, Dot, and that is the difference between surviving and truly living. Asterisk, and as the days turn into months, you start to notice the subtle changes in yourself. The constant ache of needing approval fades. The panic of being unseen dissolves. Even your own doubts begin to soften, replaced by a quiet confidence you didn't realize had been waiting inside all along. You no longer measure yourself against anyone else. No longer compare your path to theirs. No longer let someone else's failure or success define your worth. Every decision you make now carries weight because it is yours alone. Every project you start, every piece you create, every relationship you nurture is built on intention, not obligation. And strangely, In letting go of them, you start to see the world more clearly. Opportunities appear that were invisible before. People arrive who value the real you, not a version they can manipulate. Your life expands in ways that were never possible under their shadow. The freedom you once feared is no longer frightening. It is exhilarating. It is steady. It is real. And when you look back, you realize something profound. You didn't just escape the family that tried to control you. You escaped the version of yourself that needed them to define you. You are no longer the girl hiding in a shed. You are no longer the daughter begging for acknowledgement. You are no longer the failure in someone else's story. You are your own story now. And that story is just beginning. And in that new life, you start to notice the small, almost imperceptible freedoms that once felt impossible. You can wake up without anxiety weighing your chest. You can speak without fear of judgment. You can create without asking permission. Every morning, even the ordinary ones, feels like a gift. The sun rises and it is yours to watch. The silence of the studio, the hum of the kiln, the smell of clay, all of it belongs to you, unshared, untouchable by anyone else's expectations. You begin to understand that the true inheritance isn't money, titles, or recognition. It's autonomy. Your hands, once shaking under the weight of other people's demands, now mold shapes and forms that speak louder than their voices ever could. Your mind, once clouded with doubt, now dreams bigger than the empire you left behind. Your heart, once tethered by fear, now beats freely, unafraid of what others think. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, peace creeps in. Not the hollow kind that comes from ignoring reality, but the deep, unshakable kind that comes from truth, living your life on your own terms. You reflect on the chaos you left behind, the screaming, the threats, the desperation of those who tried to hold you down. You feel no glee, no malice, only clarity. They built their lives on control and fear. You built yours on courage and authenticity. And that is the difference. Because in the end, success isn't measured by how loudly the world hears you, but by how fully you live for yourself. The kiln cools, the snow settles, the city sleeps, and you stand steady, free, and unbound. This is what happens when you finally stop asking to be allowed in and start allowing yourself to belong. The story isn't about revenge. It's about reclamation. And that reclamation is eternal. The past is behind you. The future is yours. And for the first time, you can breathe without hesitation. Asterisk, and as the seasons shift, life unfolds in ways you never expected. Opportunities you once only dreamed of start arriving. Not because of connections or family ties, but because of your skill, your dedication, your vision. Collectors from across the country and the world reach out. Galleries invite you to showcase your work. Your studio thrives, not in spite of who you are, but because of it. Friends, real friends, stand by you. People who admire your resilience, who celebrate your victories without envy, who lift you when doubt creeps in. They remind you that a chosen family can be as strong or stronger than the one you were born into. And in quiet moments, when you're alone with your thoughts, you reflect. You remember the pain, the betrayal, the isolation. But it no longer holds power over you. It becomes lessons. It becomes fuel. It becomes a story you survived, not a story that defines you. You realize that life's true victories aren't about proving others wrong. They're about proving yourself. Right, about trusting your instincts. About protecting your worth. About living authentically. The Harrington name fades from your world. The scandal, the chaos, the threats, they all dissolve like dust in the desert wind, and yet you do not celebrate their downfall. You do not revel in their losses. You simply continue forward, building a life that cannot be taken, manipulated, or diminished, because the most powerful form of revenge, you understand now, isn't destruction. It's creation. It's growth. It's living fully, fearlessly, and freely. And every day, as the kiln hums, the clay spins under your hands, and the sun rises over a city that is entirely yours to shape. You feel at peace, resilience, and an unshakable sense of belonging. You are no longer a daughter who needed approval. You are no longer a sister defined by comparison. You are no longer a shadow in someone else's story. You are the author of your own life. And for the first time, the pages are entirely, beautifully yours. This is the truth the Harringtons could never take. Power doesn't come from control. It comes from claiming yourself. And with that realization, the chapter closes. Not with chaos, not with destruction, not with noise, but with quiet, unwavering freedom. The story ends here, but your life, that has only just begun.